It's just too much waste for the natural system to deal with.
The focus of this week's Vanguard show is water scarcity, which is potentially the world's next big environmental crisis. There's growing concern that the world may be running out of fresh, clean water that we use for drinking or for agricultural or industrial uses. Water scarcity may not have the same recognition as, say, global warming, but the United Nations is trying to change that. And I recently sat down with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who vows to bring greater attention to this issue.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, you've identified water security, water scarcity as one of the big issues for the UN to tackle. Can you tell me a little bit about those issues?
Water is running out. One may call it that we still have enough water to drink, but unless we use it wisely and keep it clean and share it fairly, soon the whole world will face water scarcity. Almost 50 countries, home to 2.7 billion people, have no access to water. If you look at the case of development and disease, sanitation, environmental degradation, you can see the common denominator seems to be water.
Water is sometimes compared to oil in the sense that we are using oil, it's running out. Is that a fair comparison?
There is no substitute for water. We have developed technology substituting oil, but for water there is no substitute. This is a real problem.
And one of the places where water scarcity is most critical is China, where the lack of fresh water may limit future growth prospects.
有水，但是它已经下降了。原来就是它水特别多，就是在前15、16年前吧。
This entire area right here used to be a riverbed that used to flow down to Beijing, and it's been reduced to this tiny little stream which you really can't even see from here. The North China Plain is home to more than 200 million people, and the region produces half the nation's wheat. But deforestation and the overuse of available water has dried up the plain. This is now one of the most water-scarce areas in all of China. In some parts of the North China Plain, farmers must now drill more than a half-mile to find water. Water is running out, but demand is only growing in nearby cities such as Beijing. This is Guanting Reservoir, which is one of the two main reservoirs that stores and supplies water for the city of Beijing. And when you look out, I think what's most startling is the fact that the water levels that we're seeing are actually down 97% from the original capacity of this reservoir. And if you look up at the top white band, that's where the water was. So right here are the gates that are supposed to regulate the flow of water coming into this reservoir, but there's absolutely nothing on the other side of that. About 2,000 square kilometers of arable land turn into desert each year here in China. Now about a quarter of the entire country is desert. And one of the concerns is that this desertification is slowly marching down toward Beijing.
The environmental issues are the single biggest challenge that China faces. In the rural area, it manifests itself with the falling water table. The desert spreads across northern China, yields drop. As a result, people want to move to cities. But in the cities, I think the crisis manifests itself as urbanization. It's just too much waste for the natural system to deal with. So the river becomes very polluted, and as you get closer to the coast, it's really not very usable for human purposes. These problems I just mentioned are just going to get worse.
75% of the water flowing through Chinese cities is considered unsuitable for drinking or fishing.
像这条河流是很明显的一个，我觉得像这个包装的产品，它虽然说做得非常像是自然的生态，但如果你细看的话，底下还是硬化的两边，然后它的水也只有这么一段，然后两边还有很多的居民进来钓鱼，它也不加干涉，所以这段我觉得并不是真正的解决问题的办法，它是一个应急或者说一种做的不是特别透彻的办法。
And just 100 or so meters away, here's the other half of the same river. This is all pretty much untreated sewage and wastewater that comes flowing down from a number of construction sites as well as commercial buildings and residences. And you can see, it really doesn't look like much of a river here. It really stinks.
Across the country, rivers are lined with thousands of factories that have fueled China's Industrial Revolution. The same factories that have relied on rivers are now polluting the water to dangerously unusable levels.
When we first came here, I couldn't quite tell where we were at. I thought we were just on a hillside with a bunch of trash on it. It turns out this entire hillside is the trash. If you look down, you can see just how high we are. This trash heap is probably about 60 feet high. And if you look down, you can really get a sense of that because we should be down there by the farm plots. It smells like chemicals, right?
Yeah.
It's not your everyday trash.
这是有综合性的垃圾，第一个是生活垃圾，什么都有。二一个是那个工厂那个化工厂的那个废渣，你看闻到那下面就是用土埋的。
Nearby chemical factories have been dumping their waste here for decades.
你看他的眼睛都熏瞎了，他都在这儿工作了10年了，他的眼睛就比那个化学那个烟雾啊，你看熏的，他的眼睛都熏瞎了，看不着了。
One of the big concerns about this dump, and especially about the presence of toxic chemicals, is the fact that right next to us, right below us, is the Yangtze River, which is one of the most important rivers in all of China. But the bigger concern, and it's actually pretty alarming, is the fact that this river is going to slowly get higher and higher as they created a reservoir downstream. Eventually, this entire city of about 30,000, including this dump, is all going to be flooded, is all going to be underwater, and is going to become part of the water.
所以，为了我们的生活质量好起来，为了让我们环境好起来，让我们子孙后代享受我们小时候的美好的环境，这环境是我们这一代破坏的，我们要从我们这一头把环境保好，交给下一代。
China's water crisis has reached deadly levels, but ordinary citizens have begun to wake up to the realities and are taking up the cause. Across the country, groups are beginning to monitor the health of the water. The rise of environmental NGOs is a relatively new and potentially significant development in China.
因为我曾经看到很多被污染的小河。 当初呢，我是认为是我们家乡的一条河在污染。当我出来以后，我们环保万里行走了8个省，看到了河水啊，有红色的、白色的、黑色的，还有变色河。
Local NGOs are also contributing by mapping China's growing water crisis on a publicly accessible website.
This is the the website. It's China Water Pollution Map. Our idea is to give people a better sense of the water situation. One of the tools we developed is a map of polluters.
And all of these that we're looking at are from GPS coordinates that are brought to you by local NGOs.
Exactly. China is so large, and we couldn't do all of this. It's the local NGOs which are helping us.
China's reached a stage of development where people recognize that the air and water pollution is unacceptable, and you see groups organizing around that.
If you put into historical perspective, China has progressed quite substantially. It's still not the Western style of participation, but I think it takes some time.
But time may be running out unless drastic changes take place. Clean and abundant water have helped the country grow at a furious pace in just a few decades. But its future may now be drying up.
The Florida Everglades are one of America's richest biological treasures, but they're in a pretty sorry state. Over the years, the massive wetlands have suffered from overdevelopment and drought. And while droughts may come and go, my colleague Adrian Bashuk looks into real fears that human activity just might be too much for the wetland system to handle.
I'm flying in a chopper over South Florida. I'm getting a bird's eye view of its greatest natural resource and its resource most in peril: water. Growing up here on Miami Beach, water was a part of life. I'd go to the beach a lot, sail a lot, and heck, I lived on this chain of islands in the middle of Biscayne Bay. If you take a wider look at South Florida, you can see that 4 water systems are all interconnected. Basically, a drop of water from Disney World, and I'm not kidding, flows southward through a series of rivers into Lake Okeechobee. That fresh water used to then continue perfectly south into the Everglades. This huge 100-mile long by 50-mile wide national park would send along the water into Biscayne Bay and Florida Bay, eventually mixing with the salt water of the Atlantic Ocean. It looks nice on TV, and for centuries it was a tidy, balanced ecosystem. But today, that ecosystem is all out of whack, and the water, the very fabric of South Florida, is in peril.
We're looking at Lake Okeechobee, the heart of South Florida. This is the northeast end. Well, the lake is actually in bad condition right now. We've gone through a series of extreme high water events and extreme low water events.
The day I visited the lake, it stood at 10.2 feet. The average, 15 feet. The reason, a historic drought.
To sustain a healthy lake from an ecological standpoint of view for the wildlife and the plants, you would want to operate the lake between about 12.5 and 15.5.
Here's the thing. While yes, it's the worst drought since 1946, it's an extreme event. Meaning, in the last 10 years, there have been 3 record high water levels on the lake of 18 feet or higher. The Army Corps of Engineers says that's highly unusual, that on record such extreme levels would only occur during a once in 30-year storm event. This means that certain plants are dying. During the drought, fish are dying, causing the gators to look for food elsewhere.
Oh, that's a gator. Look at that. Can we get a close-up? You see the 2 gators sitting there?
Now, moving south to the Everglades.
So this is Dan Coltrane. Dan, how long have you been working in the Everglades for?
Almost 17 years.
You are the Everglades.
Yeah, I am the wildlife in the Everglades. All right, we about ready to go airboating? This is my backyard. The water that you're seeing out here, this is actually flowing southward all the way from the big lake in the middle of Florida, Lake Okeechobee. Areas like this, average water depth, 2 inches to a little more than about 2 feet. Water goes through the mud here about 4 to 6 feet deep, and then you got porous rock, coral, limestone. And we take our water from the bottom. If we take too much water without water on the top, salt water is going to invade, which will destroy our whole ecosystem.
How does lower water levels here in Lake Okeechobee then affect the Everglades?
Well, as
we
the
actually like that sound on TV. It sounds like
as the water levels in Lake Okeechobee drop, water is not sent to the Everglades agricultural area.
It's not just because of the drought that water isn't getting to the Everglades. A series of man-made canals and development projects over the last 30 years have disrupted the ever so important natural flow.
So the southern half of the Everglades is basically dying right now.
That's a loaded statement.
Yeah.
The southern half of the Everglades.
The southern part, below Tamiami Trail, the natural water flow is non-existent. It's stagnant. You can look at maps of the water flow and you'll see it's all coming down, stops at Tamiami Trail. Water is all stagnant below that. And basically that's what makes the Everglades. It's the river of grass, just as Marjorie Stoneman Douglas says. And if the river's not moving, it's not a river anymore.
You can take a look here. The suburbs have crept 12 miles westward in the last 20 years. Miami-Dade used to stop about here.
It's a battle that we fight year after year. Developers are always trying to move further west. And so yeah, it definitely does hinder Mother Nature's job. But Environment Florida and other nonprofits here in South Florida are doing a really good job of pushing back and making sure we're holding the line and not developing further than we need to.
We want to build up political pressure, so when representatives and senators know that we're out here talking to people, they get kind of scared, want to do the right thing.
Still, while they're lobbying stop 12 of 13 newly proposed Western development projects,
A lot of people are giving something around $15 to help the cause.
roads were built long ago, like this, the Tamiami Trail, stopping that natural southern flow.
8 miles from here, we have development.
So to hydrate all those people moving west, local government turned to the Everglades to provide even more drinking water. And sometimes even floods the Everglades purposefully because it's not getting enough water from the lake.
The conservation is not of the wildlife. The conservation is of the water. We had 1,000 people move to South Florida each week. All right, this is South Florida's drinking water.
Right here.
Yeah, you have like coffee, tea, water, ice around Miami. Just remember that I played in it.
The ecosystem is thrown off. Without the right amount of fresh water, again, like the lake, fauna die. The 14 endangered species living here become more threatened.
I think she likes you.
And of course, the gators must alter their way of life.
Alligators have gotten a lot bigger than they were 20, 25 years ago. Back then, your average big alligator was 8, 9 feet. Now your average big ones you see are 13 to 15 feet.
We are seeing a trend of these more extremes.
What's the solution? How do we fix it?
To have control over Mother Nature would be the first answer.
With global warming. Yeah, they say that will destroy us.
Literally destroy the Everglades.
Oh, yeah. If the ocean levels rise, it's just going to take a whole bunch of the Everglades, and the mangroves will start taking it back eventually.
Do you believe in global warming?
Oh, yeah.
Global warming or not, what's the government doing to combat these issues? Well, the Comprehensive Federal Water Resources Development Act, or WRDA, was passed way back in 1986. An aid package for the Army Corps of Engineers and local communities to, quote, facilitate commercial navigation, reduce the risk of damage from floods and storms, and restore aquatic ecosystems. The House and Senate are to amend and reauthorize the bill every 2 years. However, the proposed $23 billion package that was up for a vote in 2000 wasn't passed until finally September 2007, when the House and Senate finally agreed, and billions were to go to the Everglades and the lake. Yet, on November 2nd, the president vetoed the bill, 7 years in the making, calling it fiscally irresponsible to greenlight over 900 projects, a system of pork barrel spending.
So we've talked about Lake Okeechobee and the Everglades, but these are inland water systems. Let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room, the Atlantic Ocean. When I grew up here on Miami Beach, the water crept into about here. Now take a look where the beach is at. This is Erosion 101. And this consortium of 5 condos are spending millions of dollars to ship in sand from the Bahamas and sand from Central Florida, literally to fortify their beach. You can see the trucks moving sand up and down the waterfront. The question is, are we literally gonna be underwater? I hope not.
Who knows what the future holds? One thing is clear, the water across South Florida is in peril.
Wet and dry cycles in the climate are totally normal and natural. Places like the Florida Everglades have been able to survive in spite of periodic drops in water levels. But Vanguard correspondent Laura Ling finds that Lake Mead, which supplies much of the water to the southwestern United States, is in danger of drying up completely.
This is Hoover Dam on the Colorado River, just outside Las Vegas. When it was built, it was the largest dam in the world, and it created the world's largest artificial lake, Lake Mead.
See a lake and see what you just referred to as your bathtub ring. What's going on here?
Well, we've been in a drought for the last 8 years, and so we've watched our lake decline in the reservoir elevation, and we see this big bathtub ring now.
When was the last time the water was at that level?
In 2000, the water was up at that upper level. We were about 25 million acre feet, and we're about 12.5 million acre feet now.
So over the last 7 years, the levels at Lake Mead have decreased by almost half?
By about half, yes.
The Colorado River, the main river of the southwestern United States, is fed by melting snow from the Rocky Mountains. But in this decade, there hasn't been much snow.
Where the trailer is on the left, that's just a little above where the high water line of Lake Mead is.
Where this trailer right here?
No, you see the little beige one way up there?
Oh, yeah. There's a trailer that you can see way off in the distance. That's about a quarter mile away, and that is where the water used to be. There used to be a launch ramp over there. Today, you can see the water is way over here. So essentially the water has retreated that much.
That's right, and we've had a combination of, I think, 5 of the last 6 years it's the driest 5-year period on record for the Colorado River. And that, along with the increased growth of the Las Vegas Valley and the Southwest in general, I think the combination of the two is affecting the water levels at Lake Mead.
People use Lake Mead for boating and recreation, but its main purpose is to be a sort of water cooler for much of the Southwest. Tens of millions of people can draw water from it each year, so when it shrinks, the stakes can be high.
Can you talk about how many people depend on water from the Colorado Basin?
About 25 million people, and that includes people in the United States as well as in Mexico.
So back in the day, you could actually go fishing off this pier, and today you can see that that just isn't the case. But this is a really good example of how much water levels have receded over just the last 10 years. What used to be water is now complete desert. This is the scenic overlook of Las Vegas Bay, but the only problem is that it's not really a bay anymore. There's no more water. If you look out behind me, you can see that the water has receded all the way over there. This is an area known as St. Thomas, and they also call it the Lost city. That's because there used to be a town down here, and when they built the dam, it flooded this area, and the whole city went underwater. Today you can see that the water has totally receded. This is just a valley here, so we're going to hike down and see if we can see any of the remaining parts of the city. Here you can see shells, and you can see them all over this trail. So if you have any doubt that this area was once underwater, here you go. Here you can see the foundation of a building, and when they were flooding the dam, they actually took off the tops of the buildings in the village so that boats wouldn't hit them when they were on the water.
No longer a problem.
Right. What does that mean now that the water levels have decreased so much, and with population increasing in these states? What are some of the big issues that you're seeing here?
If the lake continues to go lower, we would actually cut back some of our releases and not deliver as much water.
This sucks.
Yeah. There's the trail.
That looks... Ready?
Okay, so take this trail.
Hope it works. Left or right?
Left.
Maybe right.
Okay.
Now we know why it's called Lost City, because we're totally lost. Wow. This was a big building. Off there in the distance, you can see the white line, so you can see where the water was at one point. What goes through your head when you look at this bathtub ring?
That we need to prepare for the future. I mean, we need to look at what's happening, the population growth, what are the stressors, and to really keep pressing to help reduce water use.
So what are the 3 things that you could advise people to do?
Well, most water use for a home is actually on the exterior. So going to desert landscaping, reducing your water use outside, just little things, shorter showers, shutting your water off while you're brushing your teeth, all those things help to conserve water.
So 10 years ago or so, we might have been swimming in this area. There would have been fish and algae, and we would have been taking a dip and cooling off. Now there's nothing but brush and bugs, and we're sweating our asses off walking through this desert.
See more Vanguard Wednesdays at 10 p.m. on Current or online at current.com/Vanguard.